I'm Liz Prince. I run a specialist games recruitment business called Amicus. I've been a recruiter for 25 years and I'm a woman in games for 14 years. Just over 12 months ago, we launched a campaign called Putting the G into Gaming. We call it G into Gaming or GIG. It's an initiative to focus on accelerating gender diversity in games. So my aim today is to tell you just a little bit more about the GIG initiative, why we think it's needed, and some thoughts on initial practical steps that we can all take to accelerate change. We should have some time for Q&A at the end, but kind of ask us as you go. If you've got something to say, please do. So with females making up about 20% of the workforce in games, we are obviously lagging behind other progressive sectors, and we end up with team pictures that can look a little bit like this. So what's going on? So 1 in 5 of us is female in games, and of those, even fewer are directly involved in dev. When we look at the causes for those low numbers, we're faced with perception issues. We've got low visibility of games as a career for entry-level and for experienced women. We have parental influence to go into a proper job. Games are seen as a niche, maybe only for something for gamers. Maybe games is a fad. I've heard that really recently. Games is for boys or for maths geeks, and girls really don't think that they're good at maths. The hours perhaps aren't family friendly. There's inherent sexism in games. I think we've heard a lot about the culture this morning. The list goes on. And all of these issues and more impact our ability to build pipelines of female talent and to retain them in games as their lifelong career. So we wanted to make GIG an initiative that could drive forward some practical and action-based steps to address these challenges head-on, to help studios to prioritise diversity when their list of priorities may be really long and might even include their own survival. We wanted to make it simple to take some steps towards gender balance, even in the most demanding of times. Getting to grips with all of the issues, how to organise them, and our response to them was really hard because there is so much to do. And it was really important to me to get a roadmap. So earlier this year, I found a way of expressing the activity and the steps that we want to, that we were talking about and that we want to do something about. And they fell into 4 main areas of focus: the attraction, selection, development, and retention of women. So of course, when I had that, I wanted an acronym to help us remember. So ASDR. So today I wanted to talk a little bit more about what we mean by each of the ASDR areas and some examples of things we can do in each. So let's start with attraction. Looking at, I think if we go back to the long-term pipeline of talent first, we know that by the age of 17, a huge proportion of girls have dropped STEM subjects already. So attracting new talent into the industry has to start so much earlier, introducing games as a valid career option to junior school-aged children and their parents to stop this proper job issue. It's worth highlighting a report from Accenture last year which revealed that although the vast majority of young people in the UK believe that many jobs in the future will involve STEM subjects, UK girls believe that STEM jobs lack the creativity they seek in their careers. The study also suggested, I'm going to say this really slowly, the study also suggested that 60% of girls aged 14 or over wish they had studied STEM subjects for longer, with around 30% of those ultimately realising that they had limited their career choices. It's a massive, massive shame on one hand, but it's a huge opportunity for us on the other. Parents and teachers also agreed that children need guidance from businesses to visualise the career options that STEM subjects open up. And 36% of the teachers surveyed said they believe that talks in schools from industry professionals help to make these subjects more appealing. When I hear that a pharmaceutical company like GSK goes into schools regularly and consistently, year on year, to talk about their opportunities, and this to children as young as 7, I know we're missing a trick. We need to organise and mobilise an industry-wide effort to get ourselves noticed. We believe that GIG can play a part in highlighting the educational pathway into games before children start to choose their GCSE subjects by coordinating approach to getting we, the industry, and in particular our fantastic female talent, in front of kids to inspire them, especially girls, when they think they're not a gamer and they think they're no good at maths. Making games a credible career of choice for both genders means professionalising the message and getting everyone involved, including the parents. We need to win hearts and minds. So we know we have to build for the future, but what about now? What can we look at now to attract more women to the industry? All of the touch points that we as studios have with the world need to reflect our commitment to diversity. Our websites, our advertising, our job descriptions, to name just a few. So here's some top tips that we have when hiring. Make your shop window attractive to everyone. If you're serious about a diverse workforce, make it clear on your website and on your social channels. And those social channels are not just about your players and your product, they're about your brand as an employer. Think about how you appear to female and minority candidates. Raise the profile of the women within your studios because role models are key. When I asked women at the very start of GIG what they thought attracted women to the games industry, they all said other women. And I can't stress that enough. And I wasn't going to say this, but if I'm totally transparent, when I asked men the same question at the same event, they all said project, location, salary. And I was like, okay. It's other women. So when you're hiring, decide what you're looking for in that job role and person spec, focusing only on the necessary requirements. We all need to remember that women will typically want to meet every requirement on a job description before they apply. Men have a lesser threshold of meeting maybe 60% of the requirements before they'll get their CV ready for you. If you truly want the best person for the job, then make sure they want to apply in the first place. Check for gender-coded language in all of your communications. Words that are coded as perhaps more masculine can dissuade women's interest in jobs. Placing an emphasis on growth, collaboration, and inclusion, rather than terms such as confident, expert, and ninja, will attract women as well as men. Think about your usual prerequisites of hiring. So the universities and backgrounds you favour, are they all completely necessary? I've got more on that later. Think about your working hours and your ability to offer flexibility. That could really attract people who have caring responsibilities and can't take part in the workforce in a full-time role. Once you've stripped away as many barriers as you can to proactively open up the talent pool as wide as possible, start to insist on diverse shortlists. This isn't about women getting jobs over men. This is about taking positive action to balance our workforce. So moving on, when you have a CV in front of you, in just a few seconds, you can scan the information. You notice quickly then that someone went to your uni or worked with someone we know. We make judgments about what projects someone has worked on, but how considered are these decisions? Our brains are programmed for survival. We instinctively categorize people and things using easily observed criteria such as age, weight, skin color, and gender. But we also classify people according to educational level, disability, sexuality, accent, social status, and job title, assigning presumed traits to anyone we subconsciously put into those groups. When thinking of recruiting for a role, we often look at who's done the role before and who's been successful, but we have to be careful about perpetuating our prototypes. And we have to be especially careful when using the same benchmarks, tests, and judgments because they could be excluding people from very important roles. Let's look at a famous example. The UK has had 54 prime ministers so far, since the creation of the role in 1721. And just under 3/4 of all of our prime ministers went to just 2 universities, Oxford and Cambridge. They've done A-levels, they've achieved top grades, they've gained admission, they've got a top job in a relevant profession, and they've become party leader. A white child born into a wealthy household who goes to a private school and a top uni is 90 times more likely than the average black person to become PM. Now, this may be a really specific example because prime ministers have a very strange recruitment process. But we create funnels just like this when we think about hiring people like us, maybe from the same unis or from projects we admire. We continue to keep our barriers to entry up, and we're being influenced by our bias or biases. These are just some of the biases that we as human beings have, and the only way to deal with this amount of noise is to put a framework around ourselves, putting some serious controls in to level the playing field so that your mind doesn't interfere. So how do we de-bias? In pre- and post-interview selection, you have to be a little less human. I'm not talking about replacing you with AI, but you need to maintain awareness that your humanity is sometimes a weakness and you have to do everything you can to account for it. Your brain's really powerful, so you have to outclass its instincts. We have to thwart it with structure, great process, the support of colleagues, and practice over time. Take personal information off CVs, maybe even universities. Make your decisions as to who to interview based on that job description that you made a contract with yourself about, and score each CV. Think about the ways that you assess candidates. Maybe just don't always rely on an interview. Somebody who hates public speaking, I hate interviews. And I always think, well, I could do the job, but I'm not that great at interview. Also, and this was mentioned earlier, interview alongside other people from diverse backgrounds. For God's sake, put women and men at least on a panel. Be structured, ask competency and values-based questions, and use a scorecard. Try to build in a look at passion, purpose, and a growth mindset across all of your candidates. Ditch the cultural fit and look for cultural add. Hopefully, extend opportunity to people who haven't had the traditional means of proving themselves. Remember 10 Downing Street. So when we talk about development, it's clear that the gender pay gap reporting in games has shown us that we're not only lacking women in games, but it's really highlighted our lack of females in leadership. A culture of development is key to ensuring that women and men understand their career pathway at any level. Whatever the size of your business, people are so driven by personal growth, knowing what skills and tasks they need at particular levels of competency to move forward in their career, and they need to know it's fair. From induction to ongoing coaching and training, we can build a culture of development for our female talent. Mentoring that we've talked about on the last panel, it can significantly drive forward professional and personal development for women and men. Where mentors become trusted advisors and role models, they've been there and done that, to help mentees improve their skills and hopefully advance their careers. Retention is a huge topic and dependent so much on our company culture, as we've talked about. There's a lot to consider, including all of these things and probably more. I certainly don't have time to go through all of them. I wish I did. But I was just going to focus on a couple of areas that we've been talking to our clients about most recently. If we're looking to retain all of our talent, studio culture has to recognise that women and men experience their workplaces in very different ways. By establishing advocacy groups, you can give women and minorities a voice. And that doesn't mean having all female groups, however. It's about having diverse people come together and focus on the challenges in the workplace from a particular perspective, shaping the inclusive culture where colleagues can help women to shine and thrive through their support for inclusive policies and behaviours. Another big area of policy is flexible working. The reason this is so important to think about is the impact it can have on opening up the talent pipeline for you. As I mentioned earlier in attraction, many people aren't able to take on a full-time role. for a variety of reasons. There are so many options for flex working that we can have a look at. Things like part-time, compressed hours, job share, career breaks, home working, staged return to work after a period of leave. And typically, I think we, not just in games, but generally, we assume that roles are set unless someone asks for flexibility. Think how attractive you'd be to talent if all of your roles were flexible, unless there were exceptional circumstances where they couldn't be. Could we turn it all on its head? There are some big topics on this slide, but there are also some really small things that make a big difference too. I'm going to call it out on Beer Fridays, right? Huge thing in games. But how inclusive actually is that as a concept when we really think about it? What if we don't drink? Frankly, what if someone's an alcoholic or just needs to get in their car to go home? It's just, I understand getting teams together socially and to share, wonderful. But do we really need to call it Beer Friday? Big or small, making cultural change to become a gender-neutral, inclusive environment is where people want to stay and thrive. And this has been a topic from this morning as well. Why should I do all of this? Okay. There is lots and lots of research on the benefits of a diverse workforce. It's proven to significantly positively impact financial results, increased innovation, creativity. When a team is able to challenge each other's biases, that's kind of where we have problem solving, decision making that really comes to the fore. Our people are more engaged to stay, and also we can find talent in places that perhaps isn't the norm, so we can really start to attract people who are frankly representative of our players. But the bottom line for me, and the whole reason that we started the Gig Initiative 12 months ago, is because it's the right thing to do. Diversity is everything in our culture, and if people are only focused on the bottom line for why they should do this, I think probably they need to rethink their whole purpose. So when we launched Gig, I say just over a year ago, we set out 4 key aims, and we're working with many organisations to make headway. We are all about action and steps that we can take to accelerate the change, and implementing some of the things that I've touched on today can make huge impact. We do recognise that studios are keen to grow diverse teams, but haven't always known where to start or whether they have the time to devote. We want to support studios on this journey, and today I'm super delighted to announce that we're launching the G into Gaming Diversity Charter, which will help games companies with these practical steps, starting with a senior level commitment to diversity. To launch the charter, we've partnered with our wonderful friends at Right Track Learning, who specialise in providing bespoke training on a range of relevant subjects, including diversity and inclusion, leadership and well-being. When companies commit to the charter, they'll receive a diversity benchmarking tool and a checklist from the team at Right Track to see what their starting point looks like and start to collect some data. They'll also receive best practice guides in each of the ASDA areas and help to make a plan as to what actions studios can implement over a time period and measure change. We'll give you this charter logo, which can be used publicly on your websites, that you're committed to diversity, and you'll also have the opportunity to upgrade the colour of the logo to perhaps something a little more shiny as you hit milestones through your commitments. I hope everyone's as excited as we are about this initiative, and obviously if you'd like to know more, I'm here, and Paula Whelan from Right Track is also here today to answer any questions. We've also put some flyers out for you, because that's the you can get in touch via the G into Gaming website after the event. So finally, and I always say this when I'm talking about Gig, Gig is an initiative for the games industry. It's a hub and a vehicle to share ideas and best practice. It's not a business venture, an Amicus thing or a Liz Prince thing. It's a shared endeavour to focus on real change. It's completely pro bono, and we invest Amicus money into it because it's the right thing to do. Thanks very much for the opportunity to talk about it today. And if you do have any questions, I'd love to hear. Thank you.
Hello, Liz.
Hello.
How can, say now I wanted to be useful and get involved and join in, and obviously I'm not a CEO of anything, etc. How can I do it? How can I be of use? Or how can anybody be of use?
Thank you. So on the GIG website, so we're focused on the charter today because that's going out today, and we're putting it into the press because we really want companies to understand that there's a pathway for them. But generally, I ask for GIG champions of change. So if people want to get in touch again via the GIG website, there's just a little contact form just to say I can do stuff, I can be part of. For example, when we get women through from non-games women with the right skills to work in the industry, we don't put them into the amicus recruitment cycle. They go out to women in the industry to have a chat with. There's some great women champions at the moment who came into games from other sectors. I was trying to think, Tara Reddy, she used to be a vet. It's great. Anyway, now she's an entrepreneur in the games industry. And so allowing women access to fantastic women in the industry is absolutely brilliant. As we go through the educational piece, which is obviously quite a big deal, and we're plugging into some really big organisations like the British Games Institute, who are kind of trying to oversee the whole of the educational pathway into games, we will want women representatives who are willing to go and take a role in schools to inspire the next generation. So get involved. Thank you. Anything else?